G'day, this is Audrey Auld here on Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
I've been through the wasteland, washed up on the shore, drowned in the bottom.
Just to begin with, tell us about growing up in Tasmania. How much did your surroundings and your environment influence your interest in music?
Well, our house was very much filled with music. My dad's a jazz piano player and a big fan of classical music and opera, so we didn't have much television and we had a lot of music and we lived out in the bush, so, we pretty much kind of made up our own plays and dances to music and put on little shows for Mum and Dad because I had 3 other siblings, so we always kept ourselves pretty occupied and I learned classical violin from the age of 6, and I had to play every day and have a lesson once a week, and so there was a lot of music around, and Mum always sang, Peggy Lee and Julia London and a lot of those sort of older jazz singers,
Right. So it wasn't necessarily country music flowing through your house then?
No, not at all. Not a bit. I know, there's not a whole lot of country music in Tasmania. I mean, it's got its little pockets, but I wasn't exposed to it until I went to art school, and one of my teachers there, who became a friend and made me up a tape of music, and it was a real hodgepodge of like Dwight Yoakam and Patsy Cline and Bob Wills, and then more of the Texas singer-songwriters like Jimmy Dale Gilmore and John Prine. So it was a broad range of really good stuff, and that really kind of piqued my interest, and so I was sort of in my early 20s and just started exploring and digging into other people's record collections and reading and learning about the history of American country music, and also, discovered Slim Dusty in amongst all of that because I started travelling around the territory, and, obviously there's a lot of Slim Dusty vinyl records out there in people's farmhouses, so... Yeah, that was a whole new world kind of opened up to me, really.
Yeah, speaking of a trip to the territory, the bio on your website mentions a trip to the Outback as a very defining period for you. Do you think your life and career may have taken another path had you not done that trip?
Yeah, I mean, you're always kind of searching, I guess, and Tasmania was a really beautiful place to grow up, a lot of space and freedom and security. But as far as kind of finding your dreams, I think it's like a small place. So it was good to get onto the mainland, and I lived in Sydney for a while and worked in animation and had a really good job in the animation industry, but was always really searching for my passion. And, even though I'd grown up playing music and in a house full of music, it was never really presented as a profession. Mm-hmm. So it took me quite a while to find that was my passion, was to travel and play music. And it was when I was in the Outback that I learnt that. So then I went back to Sydney because I realised that, you need to be around other musicians to play music. And, there weren't a whole lot in the territory. There's the odd one, but,
yeah,
you kind of need to be in a city.
Tell us about some of the work you were doing in film and animation.
Well, I'd worked for Disney, the TV animation studio. I'd started off doing cell painting when it was still using ink and paint, and it was messy. And then I went to a commercial studio and went through the transformation from the traditional cell animation to digital. I basically got locked up in a room for 3 weeks and was told to go and learn this software, which was incredibly high-end and difficult, but I did it. And so, sadly, a lot of people lost their jobs and it all went on to computer. And so I went through that, and I've worked on, MGM feature films, and I did it for about 6 or 7 years. It was a great industry, very talented people with great senses of humour, so it's always it was a fun work environment. But,
yeah.
But I'm not an animator. I'm not a gifted artist as far as drawing goes. So I did colour styling and tracing and painting, and then I ran big studios. Yoram Gross, I was his assistant for a couple of years, and he did Dot and the Kangaroo and Blinky Bill and those kinds of films, and that was a great experience. But it just wasn't what my passion was, and so I eventually just packed up my ute one day and headed north with a kind of a one-way thing in mind and not knowing what the outcome would be, which was a really exciting thing to do.
When you discovered your love for country music, did you make a concerted effort to be a student of the music form, to take in and learn as much as you could about it?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, I read a lot. I listened to all that I could. I like delving back into the past, into where it originated, to find out its purest forms. And, I went through all the stages of listening to a lot of Nashville stuff, Reba McEntire and Garth Brooks and, that really kind of commercial stuff. But ultimately, I think the more traditional, the more raw stuff appeals to me, whether it's Buddy Miller or Lucinda Williams or Emmylou Harris. I mean, they really draw on the roots of the music, but they give it a modern edge and they give it something of themselves as well. And I guess that's what interests me.
Now, you're involved in a few groups before you embarked on solo work. Did you know when the time was right to take that plunge?
What, to go solo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, you always hear that it's so difficult to keep a group together, and it is, because, I mean, most people have got day jobs or their interest is just a little off alignment with what yours is, and, you just got so many varying things, and I just realised that I had to just, rather than try to do that thing, where you're all earning $20 from a gig in a bar, I thought, look, I've just got to go and make a CD and just try to learn to be more professional about it. So that's what I did, and luckily I hooked up with Bill Chambers. When I was seeking a producer, I met Bill Chambers, and then we started playing together. And I mean, he's been playing since he was like 16, so he taught me a lot about working on stage and getting gigs and working with the media and fans and touring and just every aspect of a professional musician's life. I learned from him, and I'm very lucky to have found someone who can teach me that, and someone who's also like a musical soulmate, really. He really understood where I was coming from. He knows the roots of the music. He understands a lot of the history of Australian country music, and he can really rock out and be really modern as well. And, I mean, you can hear a lot of his stuff in Casey's music, I mean, he's her greatest inspiration too, and he's a treasure. He's a treasure in Australian music, I reckon.
Now, other than Bill, who's obviously very much on your wavelength, did you have initial problems in Australia finding musicians that were sympathetic to the type of music you wanted to make?
Oh, absolutely. Nobody was, it seemed to me, because I was sort of oblivious to this whole country music scene. I was living in Sydney, in Glebe, and I'd be listening to Graham Parsons and Emmylou Harris or Loretta Lynn, and none of my friends listened to that stuff. I mean, we were all just, I don't know, dance music or whatever it was, just pretty heavy stuff. And then I had this little closet affair with country music, and I couldn't find any musicians. I used to advertise in the music newspaper looking for musicians, and now, I mean, there's a whole lot of great musicians in Australia who know how to play good country music, Stuart French and Chris Haig and James Gillard, and so many that are excellent musicians. And now I know that they're there, but until you enter that world, it's like you're just swimming around out there oblivious to it all.
But you're pretty confident as a songwriter right from the start, or did it take time for that to develop?
I think I was pretty confident. I mean, I didn't think that I was great, but I'd written stuff all my life, and it wasn't until it took me years to actually put writing and music together. I've always been a kind of a literary person. I've always been good at reading and writing and enjoyed it. And then my first song was like, oh, I want to write a song that Sim Dusty would sing, and I look back now and it was just terrible. But, you kind of start, it seems so easy to write something so simple, and it's really difficult. It's so difficult to eliminate words and to crystallise ideas into very few words. It's actually so hard, and but you got to start, and I loved it, so I didn't care that it wasn't any good, because it's like anything, you just got to keep doing it, practice, and every now and then a gem comes out, and you kind of go, wow, where did that come from? You can't believe that you actually wrote it yourself. And you read of many songwriters saying they feel that they're just channeling something, and I feel that that's really true.
I get the impression from you that you're someone who's not afraid to make a major change or movement in their life for career or other purposes, like walking away from your career in animation to go to the outback or setting up your own record label. Is that something just in your nature to just go for things rather than die wondering?
I reckon, yeah. I think we were brought up to kind of to think for ourselves and to question everything and to be independent and find, what do I think about that? I mean, our dad really encouraged us to develop our own opinions, and I guess my personal philosophy is that life is really short, and we're blessed to have a body and good health, and life's exciting when you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And recently, my big change a couple of years ago was to get married and move to America. And, in hindsight, it's like, oh, my God, that was such a big thing to do, to just, leave everything behind and come to this huge new country. But, it's exciting. I'm not one for routine, and I think you've just got to take the risks, because then, really, what do you got to lose? I mean, it's a matter of balancing what have you got to lose, and being fearless, it's exciting.
Was the motivation behind forming your own label purely and simply a matter of not being able to find anyone in Australia supportive of the type of record that you and Bill wanted to make at that time? Yeah,
we realised that, there was one label that made us an offer, but it was just a ridiculous offer, so we felt, well, we'll just do it ourselves. And from working in the film industry, which is very kind of organised, it's quite an advanced industry, and so compared to the music industry, which is a bit like, there's a whole lot of structures within the film industry that works in a very organised way. So I sort of applied that to the way I did the album release and setting up the business, and I just tried to do it in a very professional, business-like way. And it's, I've released a lot of albums now, and I learn something new each time, and especially to do it without any money. It's getting famous, and all of that stuff is all about having lots and lots of money. And if you don't have it, you've got to find other ways to get out there and get a bit of promotion and publicity. And ultimately, when you don't have those big budgets, I think you've really got to rely on the music to touch people and for people to respond to it, and they want to play it because they like it. And that's much better than some press agency going, yeah, you got to play it, or so. I'm really happy with how it's gone. We started that in '97, and I continue it now, and it's still like a lot of work and a lot of money, and there's always like this huge debt, but most businesses are like that, and it means that I get to do what I want to do, which is travel and play music. Yeah.
What would be some of the major pitfalls you've found in running your own label, things that you didn't expect?
You can't, the major labels have a great range of contacts, and you just can't get that. And when you're the artist, you can't be going up, look, I'm fantastic, listen to me. I'm just not. People think, oh, you're really great at promotion, but really, I'm not going to push myself on anybody. Like, they either like the music or they don't. And I think you just got to really watch your budget and not aspire to, say what Casey Chambers has got. You can't, if you're an independent artist, you can dream of that and you can want it, and that's great, but you don't want to be making yourself dissatisfied because you haven't got that, because I've been very lucky to be close to her rise to stardom and see the machine that goes into place to create that, the contacts that the label has, the things that they do behind the scenes to make that music, to get that music played, to get the albums sold. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can't do that as an individual.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you've got to go, well, this is my path and that's her path, and, both of us will have experiences that the other won't. And I think you always have to kind of keep in mind your definition of success and be really happy with what you've got,
Yeah.
Because you can just get eaten up with what you don't have, and it's a trap. It's a trap in this business,
You release not only your own material, but you've also brought other artists to your label as well. Do you have a particular criteria on the type of artist that you're looking for there?
It's just stuff that I think's fantastic, and an artist that is working hard to get their music heard, and is doing gigs and touring, and has done a bit of the work themselves. But I sort of felt that, well, I've got all this stuff in place. I have some contacts in the media. You know, they tell me, they open the envelope if it's got a Reckless stamp on it. So they kind of trust what I'm sending to them. So stuff that's not going to get put out on a major label, but I think there is an audience for. And from that first record that Bill Chambers and I did, the Looking Back to See album, we discovered accidentally that there was an audience for roots music or traditional country music, or, you know, earthy music that's not polished and highly produced. And so, you know, Fred Eaglesmith's music really appealed to us, the Yearlings, and there's a new guy from Texas, Sam Baker, that I'm going to be releasing, he's incredible. Incredible, but he's got no idea how to put out a record and do all of that stuff. So I think you've just got to, I love helping out people, you know, who I think really deserve it. I mean, he can go off and be a great songwriter, and I'm really happy to do that stuff that gets his music heard. That's easy.
Have you, it seems to me with every record of yours has been a slight departure from the previous one. Have you tried very hard to avoid being pigeonholed into a specific category there?
I haven't tried very hard to do that. I'm aware of that, and I could easily, you know, Bill and I could have easily made Looking Back to See album over and over again, theoretically, but it wouldn't be easy at all because we'd hate it and get bored, and it's just not our thing. I know a lot of artists, especially when they're successful, they feel, oh, I've got to reproduce that last album because it was so successful, and that would be a dreadful pressure. I really love the freedom of, as a songwriter, you're kind of putting together a collection of songs that is like reflective of that chapter of your life, I suppose.
Yeah.
And, you know, there'll be a year or two has gone by and a lot's happened and you've changed and your writing's changed, and it's great. The people that stick with you, they get it and they get to know you. And I know that there are people that are like, oh, gee, you know, like my Losing Faith album was like not really traditional country music, but, you know, it was coming out of a hard time in my life, and it was like the songs reflected that. And I loved just like, well, I don't care, I'm just going to do right by the songs and produce them the way they demand to be produced, rather than turning everything into a honky-tonk song, you know?
Yeah. You've been in the States for a while now. Did you have any preconceived notions of how things would be over there for you handling your career in America?
I guess I didn't have any preconceived notions, but I did feel quite overwhelmed when I got here. I was like, oh my God, this is like, you know, I've just spent 10 years doing this in Australia and now I have to start all over again. It was like, oh, it was hard. But it's actually been really great, really great. I do have fans over here. I've been sending music over here for many years to the media, so I had relationships there, and I'd toured here a couple of times prior.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I'm living in a little seaside town in California, so I'm not in a music centre. But so it's been interesting to develop working in California, because it's a very different place to Austin, Texas, or, you know, Nashville, or the places that I'm more familiar with. And it's been great. It's great. They have a lot of house concerts over here, which are like concerts in people's homes, and it's a great way to build a fan base in a new area. I'm overwhelmed by the competition. There are so many talented artists over here who, you know, you or I have never heard of, that are out there working, who are great. So it really makes you lift your game. It's good. You have to work harder and really put on something, because there's a million people over here who are standing up there, playing the guitar, writing songs, you know, and it's like, well, you could get lost in that whole crowd or try to be something a bit different. And luckily I'm Australian, you know, so I'm different from the get-go, which is great, because, you know, something about being in America just makes you be more Australian.
It's a massive business over there, the house concert thing, isn't it?
It's good. I mean, they're all different, but they're all very intimate. I mean, you're playing without a sound system in somebody's lounge room, and some of them, they put on these huge spreads of food. Everybody brings a plate, and then they have a basket by the door, and everybody just puts their money in the basket, and all the proceeds go to the artist, and it's really nice.
Yeah.
Very intimate. It's quite confronting. Some people can't do it, but But I'm fine. I like to really connect with an audience, and I feel like I've improved a lot as a performer since coming here. I feel like I've relaxed a lot more, and I'm just probably just enjoying it a whole lot more. I'm less concerned about myself. When I'm on stage, I don't think so much about myself, and I'm really having a good time.
So overall, you found it a welcoming musical community for someone coming from so far away, and I guess playing a brand of music which they would consider theirs.
Very much.
Yeah.
I've had one person who was in Texas say something about that, but that was like a stranger kind of on the street while I was out walking the dog. No, I mean, I incredibly embraced, and I forget that I'm a foreigner sometimes because I feel so accepted, and the people in this area are very much like, we call her our own. I mean, they're very proud of me, and it's really lovely.
Oh, that's great. So homesickness hasn't set in?
Oh, for sure.
It does?
Oh, you bet, yeah. And, I mean, I've been here 2 years, and I've actually got a song up on the recklessrecords.com website, which is a free download, and it's called Half a World Away, and it's about being homesick, and just being in another hemisphere, and I get my left and my right mixed up.
Yeah.
I don't, sometimes I don't know what side of the street I'm supposed to ride on. Like and just, the languages are different, and being known. And when you go through times that are particularly hard or special, it's hard, and then you miss out, like Camille Tanahu is getting married, and I'm going to miss that, and Casey got married, and people have babies and they die, and you miss these markers in people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a long way away.
Now, you recorded your first American album live in the studio. Was there a particular motivation behind doing it that way?
Doing it live?
Yeah.
Well, because I think of the guy that I did it with, a guy called Gabe Rhodes, and it was very casual. It was a bit kind of not very well planned, and, it one day sort of turned into 3.5 days in the studio, and it was like a really quick and casual way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, and I guess, and we were talking about living on the edge. It's a similar thing of, I've done albums where I've been a real control freak, and it's really, I thought, I'm going to just do something that I wouldn't normally do. And I was just, in my general everyday living, I was experimenting with, when you kind of mentally reject something. If someone says something to you, or they go, hey, read this book, and you go, no, that's not me, then I was trying to experiment with, okay, I will, if I reject something, I'll do it, just to go outside the boundaries that you set yourself. And so with that kind of approach, I wanted to just go into the studio and not be the boss, and just say, okay, here's the song, and we all sat around, and people had their input, and, we all just kind of put in, rather than me controlling, what played here and what instrument was on it, and it was just very organic. And but in that same way, my next album, studio album, is one that Bill Chambers has produced, and he's had complete say about it. I've just sort of done this, he chose the songs, I've done the vocals, but I've had very little input, and it's the same of just like getting outside of yourself to just try and get something a bit different.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you would have turned out the same album last time had you still been here?
No. I mean, they're different people. It was in Texas. They're different musicians. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anything, it probably would have, I'm not saying this badly, but it probably would have turned out better if it was done in Australia. But I don't want anyone in Texas to hear me say that. Only because the musicians in Australia are very used to, that I've worked with, they work at a very high standard, whereas in Texas, they're very much about like, we'll capture that moment. It might be a bit rough and there might be a few bum bits, but it's a great take, and they can really happily live with that.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit more earthy and dusty, and I like that.
You have a fantastic slogan there for the label, music with the dirt left on.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I love that. Do you think there is a tendency for some, particularly in the country field, to polish things up a little too much?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, and if you listen to the old stuff, I mean, I know it's a different time and different recording processes and everything, but I think there's something about keeping the one take. You know, I mean, these days they'll record a singer, they'll get them to sing it, 5 to 10 times, and then they'll cut it all up and compile into one perfect take, and then they'll use auto-tuning. And I think the soul of that performance is chopped up and lost, because you never sing a song the same way twice. You can sing it once and it's just you're in the groove, and then you sing it again and it's just not happening at all, and it's just one of those magic things that you can't control.
Yeah.
And when you start chopping up the soul of a performance, I think it's lost. And it sounds all really, really perfect, but for me, it doesn't touch me. I want to hear the bits of the human being in it,
Yeah, it's hard to believe what the person's saying, I guess.
There's that too. I mean, some of the subject matter is like, oh my God, how many times do you want to hear about Bubba and the pickup truck and the girl in the tight jeans, Like, let's move on.
How extensive has your touring been over there?
Oh, it's been a lot, actually. Gee whiz, it's such a big country. And I set down the map. Like, if I get a few offers in, I'll hook it up with a tour. So I put the map down on the floor, which is huge, and I don't know where anything is. And I'm going, yes, I'll do that gig. And then I figure out that it's like 5 days drive away. So I put the map down and I just figure out, the highways, and I hook it all up with dates and radio, and off I go. And it's I got my dog Gypsy with me, and we pretty much live in the van. America's set up for touring. It's got food and rest areas, and they call it the driving nation, isn't it?
Yeah.
For years it's been like that. Well, unlike in Australia, you'll be out there in the middle of nowhere and you can't even get a toasted cheese sandwich, So it's easier touring over here. And I have done a lot. I'm actually just going to take a break because ever since I've been here, I've been out on the road. Plus, I went to Europe in October for a little over a month and went to 6 different countries over there, and that was awesome.
Fantastic. Now, as someone, I guess, who is extremely hands-on in conducting their career, do you have a standout piece of advice for young players starting out?
I wrote a thing about this because a lot of people would ask me.
I noticed you had a little do-it-yourself guide there on your website.
Yeah, I try to just get down, stuff that I have learned, and I think, as soon as you can, make a CD, even if it's just a 4-track CD, and do it the best you can. Like, even if you've got to get a credit card and go into debt, and because then you can send it out to radio and get gigs with it, and it's not just you it doesn't depend on you playing the music live, and the studio is a very different environment to the stage, and I think it'll help you learn to sing in tune and give a good performance, because it's recording is unforgiving. It's like there forever.
Yeah. So
you got to do the best you can, and I reckon try to find the songs that work best for you if you can find 4, and find someone that you feel really comfortable with in the studio that's not bossing you around too much and trying to assert their thing on you. It's about finding out who you are, what your unique creative thing is that nobody else has got. I mean, you don't want to be like anybody else. That's the big trap, is that, a lot of the young artists look at the latest big thing and they want to be that because they want that. But the people that really stand out in the long run are those who are unique. I mean, Casey was unique when she came out. Becky Cole is unique. She's a unique entertainer, and it's finding that really special thing that you have and really honing that, I think. And the best way is to start, get in the studio and see what works. Take it home and listen to it and be honest. And the other thing I think, I was blessed to find Bill Chambers, and he was brutally honest with me about how I was as a singer and a writer and an entertainer, and shattered so many things that I'd thought were so true about myself that were just completely wrong, you know, that were really holding me back. But you've got to, you know, we all have such huge egos. It's really hard to hear anything that's actually constructive criticism. But if you have that, then just, you know, cry and then think about it when someone tells you the truth.
And just to finish up, Audrey, what's the game plan for 2006?
Well, I've got Bill's done an album, and it's just about finished. It's about to be mixed, and he's going to send me over. I haven't heard this album for a year, so we recorded it when I was back home in January. So that will be coming out at some point this year. And also, I'm going to put out a live album that I did over here in America with a woman called Nina Gerber, who's an incredible guitar player.
Yeah.
She's playing on the free download that's at the Reckless Records website. And right now, after January, I'm actually just going to have a little break, because I haven't had a break since I started playing music and touring, and I think now is the time.
Time for a rest.
Yeah, just to have a couple of months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Audrey, thanks so much for taking time to catch up with us.
Oh, pleasure, John. Thanks for listening.
Sounds like you and America are getting along just fine.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
But we hope you don't forget us back home. And
No way. I miss home very much.
We'll see you back here, I'm sure, sometime.
Okay, see you, John.
Thanks a lot, Audrey. Take care. Bye.